Hi, Josh. Thank you for being here today. On behalf of Native Network, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom with the audience at NTTA. Can you tell us a little bit about who you work for and what your role is and how long you've been there?
Absolutely. I'm currently the president of Trace Fiber Networks, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Chickasaw Nation. I've been president since 2017, and I've worked for the nation since 2015.
So what were the initial goals for the Tribal Telecom program for the Chickasaw Nation? How did it start?
That's a great question. It started prior to me coming on board. There was a initiative really in the late, it was like 2008, 2009. The Chickasaw Nation was looking to connect a couple of their data centers here in Ada, and so they contracted with a construction company just to put in some fiber that went between some campuses, went along some public right of way, and they kind of operated that for about 6 or 7 years, and we're having some issues with some maintenance and just different things that crop up when you have IT folks that are used to working in an IT setting, and then you introduce some telecom and some outside plant issues and some maintenance issues and relocation and that sort of thing. We're spread across 13.5 counties, so you can imagine that we had hundreds of circuits that were being used by various providers. And so one of the things that came with that was a consolidation of those spends. And so that really gave us an opportunity to kind of look at it as a holistic picture, right? And so here's all the spends across headquarters, across health, across gaming and commerce. And now you're able to go to those carriers and number one, you're able to say, hey, we're spending this much, we want a discount, or here's some volume, we need some reduction in cost. And so we leveraged that, but we kept looking at the bottom line and it was like, okay, even with the discount, this is a tremendous amount of spend. And what if we own our own network? Is there an ROI on that? Is there a return on our investment? Is there a return on asset there? And so I was challenged then by leadership to put together a business plan and a feasibility study to look at connecting the various properties within the Chickasaw Nation, just to see if it was even feasible, and throw that out there. And so set off on that, embarked on that journey, worked on that about 18 months. It's pretty extensive and exhaustive business plan and financial model. There's a lot of costs and analysis that went into that from that perspective. So we spent a lot of time really trying to capture all of those things, because the last thing that I wanted to do was stand in front of leadership and say, this is a worthwhile investment. You can reach an ROI in X number of years, and your return on asset is going to yield a certain percent, and not be able to deliver on that. So we were very meticulous in our calculations, and certainly we're conservative on the revenue, and we wanted to make sure we captured all of our costs. So that was really kind of the genesis of it.
Thank you. I do have one kind of off script question, and that is, it sounds like you and your staff at the time may have had the skills to create that business plan and a projection and pro forma. And what would you say to someone that is in that same position, being asked to see if it's feasible to create a business entity or to have a tribal telecom program that starts, taking some of those things and making them, utilizing internal assets, but they themselves or their department does not have those skills to be able to put together that business plan or pro forma?
Yeah, I highly recommend getting the subject matter experts to assist you. It's a complex industry. There's a lot of moving parts. I could go into great detail about some of the nuances, but it's certainly bringing in a partner that can provide the level of expertise and depth is going to be paramount to the success. This is that, like anything else, I think a lot of tribes are in the gaming world. If you think you go back to the time when we weren't in gaming, there was a lot of uncertainty, and there was a lot of models, and there was a lot of consultants out there that were throwing everything around. We're kind of in that same boat now with telecom, right? And so you really have to do your due diligence. You really need to be very cognizant of the fact and picking the right partner and finding a firm or finding individuals that have experience in telecom and in broadband and understands the nuances in that, so that you're not overstating the potential revenues or understating your potential costs or investments or expense, and your ongoing expense, your operating expense, those sorts of things. So it is something that you need to rely on someone or some firm that has telecom experience and has a track record, a proven history of delivering on those results.
That's very helpful. So how did you find out, as you were kind of in this evolution of, asking the questions at the beginning, how did you find out what was important to the stakeholders in planning this telecom program, especially after, they said, yep, thumbs up, we're ready to go, we believe you, and it looks like it could be viable? How do you decide what direction to go?
Well, it often changes. It was multifaceted, as I think we're not, unique to other tribal organizations or even other organizations. Is that sometimes you have leadership change, and sometimes you have different individuals that get brought into the conversation. But one of the things that stayed consistent, and the message that I was able to present, and I think it captured their interest as well as their hearts, is that investing in fiber is a generational investment. I think that was a central point that a lot of my leadership was able to look at that, and they felt like the future generations of Chickasaws were going to be able to have benefit and be recipients of this fiber network that we were going to invest in.
So it sounds like you were really able to capture what the values were and really speak to those values in your planning. How did you become aware of those or uncover what those were as you were preparing the business plan and or after it was approved to know how to move forward?
Well, certainly after we moved forward, I mean, that what I just described as far as the value of investing in fiber from a long term, from a generational impact, but also, they were very concerned about the sustainability, about whether or not that it was going to become something that they were going to have to support year over year. And so we became very cognitive and aware of the fact that, hey, we at least needed to be able to show that we could break even, we could pay our own bills, we could maintain a staff without asking for additional capital contributions to ensure that we were continuing to operate. So we wanted to look for other value along the way. And so when we designed and planned the network, we made sure that we were cognizant of the fact that we're going to hit Chickasaw Nation locations. But we also want to go by high value locations. For instance, we wanted to look at existing macro towers, cell towers that are along the highways and byways that are over there. We wanted to look at the other anchor institutions that we were going to go by, the hospitals, the libraries, the universities. We wanted to look at other enterprise opportunities along the way so that we could leverage our network to third parties when the time came right. And that was certainly something that we were able to do in our planning and engineering.
It sounds like you are really forward thinking, and it sounds like that value of having something that is sustainable really allowed you to make sure you were thinking about those opportunities that could come in the future. So I think that is a great note for people. And it sounds like too, you were able to uncover as people asked questions and they expressed concerns. It sounds like you listened and you used those things to help define the path and preemptively answer those questions in the work that you were doing. Is that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, it certainly did. It certainly did. I mean, it seemed like, each, milestone you met, or each quarter that we met, there was a different aspect, or a different perspective, or maybe one of the leadership teams had gone to a conference or spoken with someone, and they had a whole nother, perspective, or questions that were asked. And so we were constantly updating the business plan and the vision to meet those needs, and be able to ensure that we were making them feel comfortable with the investment that was being made.
That's a great point. It's a living document, and adapts as you grow, change, learn, and can pull in, different stakeholder perspectives. So I love that you bring that up. Is there anything, looking back, that you would have done differently?
Always.
Yeah.
Certainly. Certainly best practices, and that review of, what would you have done differently, I think is a constructive and beneficial in any time that you're doing a new business venture. And so, for us in that case, is that we started with the mindset of a middle mile provider, and that was really kind of our focus. Probably looking back, we probably should have looked at it a little bit more from a retail and a broadband perspective, as far as, how could we reach, individual citizens with a little bit more bravado and stuff. So it was great that we had the middle mile, and we went through those communities, and we had the high value locations. But it would have been a little bit better had we had said, let's take a different route here. Let's capitalize and look at the number of citizens that live in this community, and provide, an opportunity to provide them home internet at their cell. So that, from just an engineering perspective, was one aspect of it. And I think, from another aspect of it, when you start to look at, again, and I preach this all the time, as far as from your operational costs and those sort of things, careful for, planning with the state agencies, the local agencies, and figuring out, again, you may pick a path that looks great today, but come to find out, the Department of Transportation may have a bridge project, or a road move, or some sort of, the city may have some sort of plan to expand the road. So if you go through there with your fiber line, and you don't have those conversations, or you don't look for what's happening down the road, you may get a call or an email 12, 14, 15 months later, and says, oh, by the way, this line you just installed, we need you to pick it up and move it. And so that comes at a great cost early on in your business. That becomes an expense that you want to try to avoid